calling my name. I hear you calling my name, calling me out of my shame. Take it away. You show me I'm not the same. Talk about how you reclaim me, holding me like I'm a baby.
Hi y'all, and welcome to the Socialite Diaries. I'm so excited to be back. Just closing out the side hustle series. I was really grateful for how many of you reached out to me. I had a few of you reach out to me for recommendations. I had a few of you guys who used my referral code. I am so excited that y'all are getting out and getting your side hustle on. I'm excited for y'all's journey. Today is going to be a little bit of a different episode. If you are a teacher or a teacher in training, then this is for you. If you have no interest in teaching, then you can go back and interact with my previous 2 episodes about side hustles, and then we'll get back to the regular scheduled program on the next episode. I'm going to open up in prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you so much for everything that you've done for us, God. You are such a good God. I just thank you for the ways that you have blessed us tremendously, that you have loved on us, cared about us, kept us through highs and through lows, Lord. I just ask that you continue to prepare us and grow us and stretch us. Lord, just give us a tone that is friendly and kind and thoughtful, Lord. I just thank you for everything that you're doing in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. So I did ABA for almost 3 years, but have quite a bit of experience working with kids with autism and then kids with behavioral disorders. I do have a bachelor's degree in psychology and then a master's of human sciences. I also have worked in a psych ward, which is another story for another day. I've been a case manager, and then I moved on to the ABA clinic. And my time in ABA was rough. I think I very quickly picked up on kind of what ABA was. And I think that ABA therapy itself as a concept works. However, I don't believe that most ABA clinics are fully equipped to handle and fully teach the children what ABA actually is. So my personal experience, I worked for 2 different clinics. I was at one, the Lord kept telling me to leave. I stayed way too long. Went to the second one hoping for something different, got exactly what I got at the first one, and then very quickly left the field altogether. We as therapists were very much, to me, and this is not to take away from the work that we were doing, because it is very important work, and there are people who are doing a very good job, but I felt for me where I was working, it was more of glorified babysitting, I think, than it was actual therapy. I think I've seen some clinics where therapy is done well and it's done right, and this was not one of them. And so I think just the lack of training, the lack of cohesion, the lack of support, leadership, it was really a difficult time being there. Anyone who goes into ABA, you know that the children are physically violent, they can be verbally abusive, and that's what they're there for. And so understanding that that's what they're there for is your job. However, we did have a tremendous lack of support within administration. And so I do think that even though it's the job, it doesn't mean that it's what has to happen, if that makes any sense. I do have a video previously about RBT to teacher as to why I discontinued my journey to becoming a BCBA. And a large part of that was the time management. I knew that I wanted to be able to have time to do the things that I enjoy to do outside of my job. My job is not my life. And I was seeing how draining it was for the BCBAs that I was under, and just even the hours of, sometimes you're getting there at 6, sometimes you're starting at 7, sometimes you're leaving at 6. That's almost a 12-hour work day. For me, that's just not cohesive for my goals and for my dreams. It was not the path for me, and I commend those that it is the path for. I commend those who are able to do it and do it well and do it right, and I just wasn't seeing that. And so thus came my journey to becoming a teacher, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually ran from teaching for quite some time. I was like, I will never be a teacher. I don't even want to go into education. My family's full of educators. I don't want to be an educator. And kind of fell into this position accidentally. I was long-term subbing and I had an assignment for like 3 days. The first day that I got there, I loved it. I loved the kids. I loved the environment. And so I came back the next day, and halfway through the day, the teacher quit. They offered me the position full-time and I accepted. And so here's where the nitty-gritty part comes in. As a teacher, even as a long-term sub, I was already making more than I was making as an RBT3. So as an RBT3, I was making, I want to say 19 an hour, something like that, but I have a master's. And so I know with teaching, it does matter how much you make depending on your degree level. And so it includes degree, it includes experience, while in the field of ABA, it did not include degree, it only included experience. And oftentimes to get that experience, it was a long and treacherous process. Moving into the classroom as a long-term sub, I'm going to be completely candid. You are kind of thrown into it. The expectation is that you take on the full-time role as teacher and you do all of the responsibilities in which a teacher is expected to do. However, it's literally like you go from substitute teaching, like reading the rosters, showing a movie, to full-time teacher within the span of like 24 hours. And so I was extremely blessed because there was already someone in there who was capable of teaching the class on her own. And so my support teacher in my class taught me everything, taught me how to use Schoology, taught me how to take attendance, taught me how to run the classroom, to deal with behaviors. I was extremely blessed, and I often joke with her that the Lord kept her there because he knew I was coming. My advice would be, if you do decide to move into teaching, very quickly find a mentor, because it can be an overwhelming amount of information. And yes, everything is at your fingertips these days. You can get on TikTok, YouTube, Google, but if you don't know what you're looking for, trying to learn it with no direction can be really difficult. And for adaptive behavior, there are a different set of guidelines that you do have from the other teachers, because you are answering also to the law and to the parents of special education children. And so a lot of what we do is just making sure that we are within the realms of what the law states when it comes to an adaptive behavior classroom. That was new for me, but also enjoyable for me. I knew at my ABA clinic, there were a lot of times that I was like, no, I feel like this is not ethical, this is not moral. And within my classroom, I'm allowed to not just make those decisions, but I am expected to follow the law and to follow the ethical guidelines. I really like that. I think at the end of the day, we're dealing with children, and I answer to the Lord about his children. And so I do take it very seriously when it comes to the kids that are involved in my classroom and in my case management. All right, so let's talk about the Texas content exams. I was terrified. I'm going to be completely honest. I was terrified to take the exams. I think I saw an overwhelming amount of content on TikTok, on YouTube, of people taking these exams 3, 4, 5, 6 times and never passing, losing their jobs because they never passed, having to pack up their classrooms at the end of the year. And I was like, there's just no way. And as a new teacher, you're literally picking up the classroom. You are learning how to use Schoology, you're learning how to do attendance, and then on top of all of that, they want you to prep for these exams. And so I was under the impression, this is silly y'all, I was under the impression that everyone was taking every single exam. And I was wrong. And so as the adaptive behavior teacher, I am required to be certified in quite a few areas. My class is one of those classrooms where you do have to be able to teach every single subject, because I might have a 6th grader one day who is in there for science and math, and then an 8th grader who's in there for language arts and social studies. You have to be able to teach all subjects for all grade levels in the grade level in which you're assigned. And so for middle school, I am expected to teach all subjects for 7th and 8th grade. And it is a daunting task. And then to have to be able to pass the exams, even more daunting. I worked my behind off. I'm going to be completely honest. I was not given a lot of time to take the exams. I think it kind of depends on what time of year you are hired to teach, because I was getting close to the deadline for hire for teachers. I either passed the exams and I was hired for the school year and I was paid through the summer, or I didn't take the exams. I would have to find a summer job and I would have to reapply in the next school year. That's not an option. I was not willing to get a summer job if I was already in the classroom. And so I think in the span of 3 weeks, I took all content exams, all area levels, including special education. And so here's some tips on how I passed all of them the first time. So if you're not familiar with the setup for the content exams, if you're taking all core content, you're taking it all in one day. So it is a 5-hour exam. You're taking math, science, social studies, and English. And I believe it's English and special education, which is a separate content exam that I had to do a short answer. So you are proctored. My exam, I took it at Pearson, and they set you up and it is timed. So they explain to you, this is timed. If you need to use the bathroom, if you need to get water, it will be on your timer. And so I was not aware of that going into this, and I should have done more research. But essentially, you do want to plan out your bathroom breaks and your water breaks so that you're not missing content that is going to be more difficult for you. So I knew that math was more difficult for me, and for some reason, went up to use the bathroom in the middle of my math exam. Y'all, I came back and it was timed out. And so strategically, going into the exams, you really do want to plan, because if you get halfway through an exam that's more difficult and then you decide to use the bathroom, you decide to get water, if you run out of time, that is a dock on you having taken this exam. And the one thing about taking the all core contents exam is you have to pass a minimum of, I think it's 3 exams in order to be able to retake just one. So let's say you take it and you fail 3 of them, then you have to retake the whole exam. But if you take the exam and you pass 3 of them and then you fail the 4th one, then you can just go back and take the 4th one. So that's how that goes. I can't, obviously, for legal reasons, reveal anything that's on the exam, but I can say when I was in preparation for how I was going to study and what I was going to do to prepare for these tests, again, it was very last minute for me taking these tests. I took them, I think I was told that I needed to take them on a Thursday. I prepared a Thursday, a Friday, and I took one on Saturday. And then the next week, I was told I needed to take the next one, and again, prepared on a Friday, took it on a Saturday, and then the next one I took on a Monday. And so it is possible you can pass it the very first time. I went through the alternative teaching program called I Teach because it does partner with my teaching district. And so they give you a free tutorial on passage preparation. I used passage preparation for my first 4 content exams, so math, science, English, and social studies. And so I used passage preparation, and honestly, I chunked my studying. Study for 30 minutes, you take a break. I sat and I studied for 30 minutes and took a break, 30 minutes and took a break for probably a good 5 hours, if I'm being honest. And by the time I got to the end of each module, I would just take the passing quiz and then move on to the next module. I wasn't sitting and trying to study. I would write down words I didn't understand, and at the end, I would loop all of them back around and add the words that I didn't understand or the ones that I got wrong into a Quizlet. And not saying this is the way to study, because I highly do not recommend it, but it is possible. I did play YouTube videos with people talking about some of the topics that would be on the exam while I was studying. And if I heard words that I didn't understand or I didn't know, I put them in the Quizlet to study at the end. And so I ended up finishing the exams. The only one I didn't finish was math, and I left feeling very defeated, if I'm gonna be honest. I think I got home and I told my husband, like, I did not pass. I will not be a teacher. I failed. And the exams were not easy, but the content that I learned from passage preparation and from the actual Pearson and Texas website was all on there. And I felt very prepared, but then it's like you get to the test and I was like, I don't know, let me just give my best guess. And it takes about a week to get your test results back. That whole week I was sweating bullets. If I'm gonna be honest, I was sweating bullets. And then I got the email that I had passed every single exam. Even math, the one that I was like, I didn't even finish, I passed it 5 points above the required score to pass. And I was like, that's nothing but the Lord. I say all that to say, because the test exam does give you grace, I think the passing score that you need is a 240 or a 245. And I think I scored on just about all of them a 270 and up. And so it gives you so much grace to not do well, but to do what is required of you, that it is possible. And so next I had to prepare to take the special education exam. And then now in Texas, if you are certified to teach language arts in any grade level, you are required to take the science of teaching reading. I started preparing for both because both had a short answer portion. In order to prepare for the short answer portion, I actually reached out to my district and asked, is there any programs that you guys sponsor? Do you guys partner with anyone that will be able to prepare me for these exams? And they did 240 tutoring and will give you a free subscription. And so they hooked me up with 240 tutoring, and I wish that I had started with 240 tutoring. 240 tutoring was exactly like the exam. They prepare you for the short answer. They prepare you for the multiple choice portion. They teach you about the laws, the regulations, every single thing that you could think of was on 240 tutoring. And so when I tell you I sat down and did those 30-minute increments on 240 tutoring, I was studying because I only had 3 days before I was going to take the exam. And I got to the point where I felt more prepared this time around. I think especially because for science of teaching reading, it is essentially the language arts content exam, except it has a short answer. And there are so many YouTube videos that specifically tell you the writing structure for the short answer so you can score your full score. And I think for the special education exam, because I had been in the classroom for months already, I wasn't really nervous about this one. A lot of the laws are laws that you should know while you're teaching. A lot of the content and the hypothetical situations are things you're actually going to encounter. And so not saying don't study, absolutely study. Absolutely study. However, because you will have experience in it, it is not as difficult as taking math and you're not a math person. And so I took both exams. It was a lot easier. The timing, I think it's a 3-hour exam if it's just an individual exam. You cannot take both exams on the same day. I wish you could, but I ended up taking the special education on a Saturday, and then I took the science of teaching reading on a Monday. I just took off work and knocked them both out. It is a long and it is a tedious process to take these exams, but once you get through it, when I tell you the amount of like calmness that came over my body of like, okay, we did it, we're done, whatever the results are, we did it, is a really great feeling. And so for these two, I didn't have to prepare as much because the exams aren't as long, they're not as tedious. The writing portion, it was really up to you. I personally would visit the website and do the practice writing exams. I sat and I wrote and wrote until I was able to get down packed what all I wanted in my head. It was really cool to be able to go to work the next day and be able to say I passed. And I know in our district there is a need and a lack of adaptive behavior teachers. I know in my school when I interviewed, everyone kept saying, no, we're looking for a unicorn. We're looking for someone who can pass all the exams because right now there's only 2 in the district. It was really, really cool to be able to say now there's 3 and that I was able to do it on the first time because those exams cost money. That was what I forgot. Those exams cost money. Every exam costs money. And so it's not $50. I think the exams are $150. So you want to be cautious and careful of playing around before you actually take the exam. If you're not going to take it seriously, if you have not done the studying, do not take the exam. At the end of the day, you're making substitute money until you pass these exams. You don't have access to teacher money until these exams are passed. And then at that point, it is a different game. You're playing a different game because you don't have to worry anymore about getting paid for holidays. You don't have to worry anymore about leave time, paid time off, benefits. And so it's like the name of the game is getting the access. Now I'm officially certified in math, science, language arts, social studies, science of teaching, reading, and special education. And I know for me, I think one of the most empowering parts about being certified in every area is movability. I was always taught as a kid, you don't level up to get the opportunity, you level up to be able to leave. I do think that there were times where I was in adaptive behavior, and the first thing that would register in my mind when I would be in a really tough situation or I would see things that I didn't like or didn't sit right with me was, I can leave. I have the ability to move. I have the ability to be flexible and go to a different job because I have put in the work to get my degree. I put in the work to get certified in other things. Whereas a lot of people go into the field and they get stuck because they're not able to leave. And that's not on them. However, it is a stressful moment to be in when you know you need to leave and you can't leave. And so I highly recommend 240 tutoring. I recommend passage preparation. Both were really great in my study toolkit. I recommend Quizlet. If you could use Quizlet and just put in all of the terms you don't understand, put in the laws, the names of times, history, you will be okay. And if you don't pass it the first time, that's not a tick on you. There's a lot of information. It is a hard exam, and don't let anyone tell you any different. It is difficult, but it is also doable. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps in preparation. I hope that helps in why I left the field, why I've switched to teaching. And in all truthfulness and honesty, my salary yearly for ABA, I was making $24,000 a year. As a first year teacher in adaptive behavior with a master's, I am making $70K. And so that is tripling my salary. Again, in honesty, the work for teaching, if you can take data in a clinic, if you can work with behaviors in a clinic, you can do adaptive behavior like it's the back of your hand. This is a lot easier than any job that I've had in this field because you're teaching and the kids have to be up to a level and a standard of capability to be in the classroom that you won't see in ABA. And so the getting beat up every day, getting spit on, getting kicked and hit, while that is for some people, it was not sustainable for me. Being in this classroom, I know a lot of people look at our class and they're like, I can never do what you do. And I'm like, it's not actually that bad. Maybe that's my trauma from ABA speaking. It's not actually that bad. I get off at 3 o'clock. I don't stay late. I don't have paperwork all day long. I have paperwork, but it's nothing in comparison to ABA. I have a planning period. I have a lunch. I don't know how many of y'all who are ABA therapists or RBTs, we did not have lunch. And if we did have lunch, we had to eat with the kids. I get a 30-minute child-free, interruption-free lunch every single day. And I love it. I love it. I love my kids. I love my job. Every day is not perfect, but my worst day teaching was my best day as an RBT. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps in preparation. I hope that helps in why I left the field, why I've switched to teaching. So if you need to reach out to me, if you have any questions about first year teaching, if you have any questions about taking the exams, preparing for the exams, please reach out to me. I love to talk about my job. I love to talk about teaching. I love to talk about taking the exams. Reach out to me.